On this edition of Native Report, we visit radio station KFAI and talk with producer Laura Waterman Wittstock.
Particularly in the countries that were colonials, that went to other countries where indigenous people lived.
You know, today there's no fish. There's no fish.
We hear from Billy Frank Jr. about his efforts to protect treaty rights on the West Coast.
And nothing is, you know, they're still in danger.
And we spend an afternoon learning about the Sami. We also learn something new about Indian country and hear from our elders on this Native Report.
Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux Community, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, and the Blandin Foundation.
Welcome to Native Report. I'm Stacy Thunder. Laura Waterman Wittstock, a pioneer in the communication field, began her career writing advertising copy in Washington, D.C. A published author, a community activist, and more importantly, a parent and grandparent, Laura has seen the cultural changes across Indian country firsthand.
Well, we're back with Bill Means, founder of the International Indian Treaty Council, and we're just talking about this long history, which we, know about from some of our other guests, and how difficult it was. You know, it was the Standing Bear trial in the United States.
On any given Wednesday, this is how you typically will find Laura Waterman Wittstock, seated at a microphone as host of her weekly radio talk show, First Person Radio.
I came out of print journalism. I was in Washington, D.C. in 1971, and Jim Thomas, who was a public relations person, a Tlingit from Alaska, I met him, and he said, "Oh, you don't belong in the BIA." I had come out of advertising. I was a copywriter. So he took me over to the Legislative Review, and in a few months I was the editor, and then I started working with the American Indian Press Association. Then in 1974, I was recruited up here by the National Indian Education Association, and the director, Ace Simont, was very interested in these brand new American Indian movement schools. And he said, I want to do something with these schools. And so we formed a nonprofit organization called Migizi Communications, and we went out looking for somebody, a station that would air our show. And KFAI, right here in Minneapolis, a tiny little station at the time, said yes. And so we started doing a weekly program.
Another commercial station picked up Laura in her show, but being broadcast during late night, her listening audience was mostly truckers.
They would call in from time to time and say how much they enjoyed the show. And so that was very interesting. And so we began to focus on the new tribal stations. There weren't many of them. And so we also focused on university stations and community stations. Eventually, First Person Radio, as it was named back then and still today, was a weekly news magazine of 1 hour in length. And we had 51 stations carrying the program. And we were the first Indian program to go up on the satellite in 1983.
The need for such a program is based upon Native people having information to make informed decisions.
In the Indian community, the things that affected us are Congress and the courts. And it's always been that way. But if you hear about it after the fact, just imagine if the Cobell settlement were back then, when half the newspapers were down, the tribal councils themselves were not very open about sharing news with the general population. So if you had radio, you could turn it on and hear, oh, well, the Cobell settlement is coming. You can sign up and, apply for the funding that's due to you. Just that alone.
The format evolved over the years from a news magazine with multiple stories to what it is today, the long-form interview with one person.
That way we feel we get in depth with what that person has done, what they've accomplished, and so we're really looking for people who have accomplished a great deal. We interview in person in the studio or by telephone. Content, I think, is really important. Storytelling is important. Indian radio stations want that. They want interesting stories about interesting people that relate to them culturally. Well, and I reported, on changes in the Indian community. Radio is a wonderful medium for Indian people. We're very oral. We like to hear stories and as well as tell them. So radio does that. And, when you're on radio, you're only talking to one person. It's that listener out there that has you, has their attention, and they're listening. And so that's times however many, you're hoping, a million or two. But it's that one person that you're telling that story to. That's sort of the magic of radio. You may have somebody who is not used to public speaking, but it's just the microphone. It's not a high-stress environment. And they start to talk about themselves, and they really do reveal a lot. And that's been the gift, I think, that people have given us, the various people that have come on the program.
As a published author, Laura is very active within her Native community, and when she isn't at the station or handling consulting duties, she spends time with her family.
I pay a lot of attention to raising my grandchildren. That's really important. And seeing that they, have what they need and being supportive of them. My husband and I have been married for 41 years, and we're looking at, what's next. And but I really, I'm retired, and I'm doing first-person radio, and I'm still connected with Migizi Communications in a way. But life goes on. We have these 4 new radio stations in Minnesota, and they're looking for content, and I would like to continue to provide that as long as I can. We will see you next week here on First Person Radio, Wednesdays at 9 a.m. First Person Radio is heard across Indian country. Look for First Person Radio at migizi.org on Facebook, and Wittstock at Indian First on Twitter. So we will see you next week. That's good. There's never a closed door that you can't open, because if you have drive, and that's what it takes, and ambition, that's the other thing that it takes. All of the rest is obtainable. Education is obtainable, and working in organizations is obtainable.
Did you know that the Sami are Arctic indigenous people living in northern Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Russia? The Sami ancestral lands span over 150,000 square miles. They are best known for living as semi-nomadic reindeer herders, but also traditionally fish and trap for fur. One theory holds that the Sami descended from people who followed receding glaciers inland from the Arctic coast at the end of the last ice age over 10,000 years ago. Today, many Sami live in urban areas, but some still dwell in villages in the high Arctic. Similar to North American indigenous people, the Sami have suffered the loss of culture and language due to boarding schools run by governments or missionaries. They have also suffered the loss of land. The Sami are recognized as indigenous people in Norway, and according to international law, the Sami of Norway are entitled to special protections and rights. In 1998, the country of Sweden formally apologized for wrongs committed against the Sami.
Treaty rights advocate Billy Frank Jr. is chairman of the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission. His dedication to the treaty rights cause helped save a precious resource not only for the Nisqually and other Native nations, but also for broader society. Native Report caught up with the chairman to ask for an update.
On this fall afternoon, the history and future of treaty rights in the Northwest is a topic at the annual gathering of the National Congress of American Indians.
You know, when I was 6, 7 years old, there was salmon in the river. You know, every coho salmon, right now this time of the year, fall salmon, Chinook salmon, steelhead, chum salmon, winter fishery. And then we go back to the spring salmon again, and then the summer salmon. We had a fishery all around the whole calendar year. They're gone now. There's no more fishery anymore. It's like the buffalo are gone, you know. And so, you know, we still have a chance to bring these salmon back if the federal government will do what they have to do when it comes to the treaty of our treaties, our 5 treaty areas. The habitat's gone, you know. There's no in-stream flows. There's some on some rivers and some on the rest, you know. So what they're doing, the state of Washington, they turned their authority, EPA, Environmental Protection Agency in Seattle, federal, they turned their authority over to the state of Washington on water, clean water. And so, you know, they got to take that back. They've got to, I mean, you know, there's wells being drilled now throughout all of our state of Washington, you know, just drilling wells all over, you know. And all of a sudden we see our creeks where the spawning beds are going down.
Chairman Frank and other members of the panel related their stories of protecting their treaty rights to fish free from state regulation and interference.
I grew up on the river, born and raised on the Nisqually River, the mouth of the river, and that was our in the First World War, our Nisqually Reservation, 2/3 of it was bought by the military and for Army purposes, for training troops. And so they moved my dad from Muck Creek Village down to the mouth of the river and replaced him, and then they took that land into restricted trust status like the reservation, but it was clean off in the reservation. It was 8 miles off the reservation. So now we're sitting on the mouth of the river, and that's where I was born and raised, and I started fishing. I was 14 years old now when I went to jail, you know, and got arrested for fishing off the reservation. They said, you can go fish on the reservation, but you can't fish off the reservation. And I said, well, we got a treaty with the United States, and we can fish anywhere in this usual custom fishing area. And what we did in 1854 and 55 is we signed this treaty with the United States, and from Canada to the Columbia River, and on the western side of the mountain. And it took in millions of acres of land. and that was our usual and custom fishing area. And I said, well, that's what I go by. And the state said, no, that ain't what you go by. You go by our laws.
All Billy and other treaty rights activists wanted was for treaties to be upheld, since they are the law of the land.
It was just the anti-Indian movement in our lifetime. We started to have fish-ins, and we had all of the actors, and Marlon Brando and Buffy St. Marie and Jay Silverheels and all of the rock and roll guys. They all supported us, the Grateful Dead and the Monkees and all of these. Everybody, they wanted us to keep fighting for your right. The state's wrong doing this.
Celebrity involvement was important, but it was another event that changed the course of tribal history.
We're going to fish on the Puyallup River off the reservation. And so it was a beautiful day, like fall day. The silver salmon were running, coho salmon, and so this day, the City of Tacoma, State Patrol, Washington Department of Fish and Game, and all the department and the sheriffs, they all come down and arrested us. They took our fish camp, arrested about 200 of us, and our kids and everybody. And so that was, and they gassed us that day. They gassed all of us. And the U.S. attorney that we were trying to get him to take our case all this time, hey, you come and take our case. No, we can't take your case. And he got gassed that day. And he finally took our case, U.S. versus Washington. That's how it got into court.
Billy Frank spent his life fighting for tribal fishing rights. Today, he fights for the environment.
The state of Washington has killed all the wild salmon. There's no viable salmon anymore. We wake up every day, we got to fight, every day. We're not, it isn't over, and it never will be over. We're going to win this battle. We have to win.
I still am good with my native language, as taught by my elders. I come from a community on Lower Kuskokwim, Bethel area, and I was born in 1945, August 17, a free indigenous man. I heard the birds calling. Those were our food. When the salmon ends toward May, we look to them for food in spring camps. I was born to hunt freely in any direction that I wanted, to hunt those blackfish, pike that fed our family. And my parents tell me God gave us that resource to survive as an indigenous person.
There are many similarities between Native nations in North America and the Sami, the indigenous people of Northern Europe and Russia. Listening to Arctic stories, doing arts and crafts, and playing games is how one group of adults and children learned about Sami culture.
On this summer day, parents and their children attended an art education workshop on the campus of the University of Minnesota, Duluth. There they learned about the similarities between the Sami and North American Native nations.
The Norwegian government tried to integrate the Sami people to become good Norwegians. So they put the children in boarding schools, took them away from their parents, and literally beat the traditions out of them, their language, They were not allowed to do the tribal chant that they have. We don't have tribes, but it's similar to the tribal chant that you have here. And they were not allowed to do it and to speak the language. We were in the Turtle Mountain Indian College a couple of years ago, and Jim Davis, the president there, he let us go into the archives, and we could see the similarities. For instance, we have the drinking cups that are quite similar. You have the pattern on the belts, the way of having it on your dress, and you have a lot of, like, this is the symbol of the sun, because the Sami refer to themselves as the people of the sun, and we saw kind of like a similar shape for the sun in the archives. And you have the lavo and the teepee, you have herding the reindeers and chasing the reindeers, and you have the buffalo, you have the white buffalo, and we have the white reindeer that are kind of very valuable for the Sami. And you have the traditions of doing arts and crafts and also food. You have bullets and bangs, and we have bidos. It's kind of like the similar dish, but we use reindeer meat instead of buffalo or bison.
Stina and Anita Bart Jorgensen condensed as much as they could into this afternoon. It is all part of their traveling presentation, honoring the earth, Sami women.
I'm traveling as a storyteller, so I've been collecting unique fairy tales from the Arctic storyteller oral tradition and made them possible to understand for the children of today. And I was invited to come to Minot to the Norwegian Høstfest in 2005 with the fairy tales, and we started in the schools, and after a while we started to tell more stories, and we got to know more people, also indigenous people here, natives, and they have invited us to come and share our stories, and so it's kind of increased. So now we've been touring in New Orleans, in Seattle, in New York, Minneapolis, Duluth, yeah. You have kind of signature dresses or outfits that the Sami use, because the reindeer herders have totally different outfits and language than the southern Sami, and some is kind of like dialects. They can understand word, and word are similar, but in other places you can't even understand each other. So although Norway and Scandinavia is a small kind of group of countries, still they've been so isolated in their valleys that they could speak different kind of almost languages from village to village. And my dress is a coastal Sami dress, because my mother's roots are from the coastal Sami area outside Tromsø, our hometown, and it's totally different from the reindeer herders' dress.
Other workshop activities included playing a traditional game and doing craft work. All of this was done to raise awareness of Sami culture.
The Sami people are living in Scandinavia and the northernmost part of Russia, Siberia and Russia, and they were originally nomadic. They were traveling with the reindeers, and the reindeers, of course, they don't see any borders, so they were kind of walking back and forth from the winter time to the summertime. And the Samis also live down south in Norway, and the different Sami people does not speak the same language, but they share kind of like the similar background and traditions with using the lavo, it's kind of like a teepee, and herding the reindeers. But I'm Arctic Métis. I'm more like a mix of several of the folk groups living in the Arctic, because as the generations went on, they interact with Norwegians and they married with each other. So, but today I think it's about 80,000 Sami people living in northern Norway. The wind have changed, so now they try to make up for that by letting children go and herd the reindeers if they are of a reindeer herder family. And even in the schools of Norway, the children are entitled to be taught their mother tongue. So they try now to kind of rediscover their roots and their heritage and tradition. So the last 25, 30 years, it's been increasing interest of bringing back traditions and roots.
Og det skjømmes mens jeg ror, det blir blått rundt begge årene, for en kald krok I en fjord.
For more information about Native Report or the stories we've covered, you can find us on nativereport.org and Facebook. Thank you for watching and spending this time with your friends and neighbors on Native Report. I'm Stacy Thunder. See you next time.
Stacy Thunder is a member of and legal counsel for the Red Lake Nation, and Tad Johnson is a member of the Boys Fort Band of Chippewa and is chair for the American Indian Studies Department on the campus of the University of Minnesota Duluth. Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux Community, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, and the Blandin Foundation.